This is going to be very strange, or maybe not. Maybe you've seen it before. Chris is doing this quite well. We're basically going to route our audio through here, through my account. I'm with Devin and Leon over on the StreamYard link. We're also streaming this out to our own audiences here and also on YouTube at the moment, because we want the world to see. I'm wearing a Bitcoin t-shirt for the occasion. Can you guys see that? I have a plush capybara next to me here to honor the Brazilian roots here. Guys, how is it going? We had the little icebreaker question earlier. What are you drinking? So I want to start off with that. Leon, how's it going? And what are you drinking?
My man, I'm staying hydrated. Most important. Remember back in the bull market, 2021, 2022, it was the bull market when people would remind each other on Discord to stay hydrated. So definitely getting bull market vibes, man. Just sipping here on my water, brother. No, it's great to have you, man. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Cool, man. I knew it was a topic that excites you. And I have to give credit to Devin, who kind of, I don't know, this sprouted in our brains when we were on a call like 2-3 weeks ago. And then, and here we are. Now it's happening. Devin, how's it going?
Going well, man. Thanks. Good to see you again, Fred. It's nice to be here chatting with you guys. I'm staying hydrated, BPA free. Trying to avoid the microplastics. But
that's a shout out at you and I, Fred, directly.
we're 5 minutes into the show, I'm already getting dunked on for my BPA.
It's okay, man. Listen, whatever you're doing, just keep doing that. It's working for you. So
Let's roll. I love it. Yeah, guys. We already are 45 minutes into the show. A lot has transpired. A lot has happened. Storytelling is an important topic. Before we get into the meat and the sauce, because I did have a session where I basically had people put it out on the table. What are their thoughts on storytelling in Web3? What is different versus Web2? And what are their unique challenges pertaining to their projects? Before we go into that, what makes you interested in storytelling? What do you do in your work that you can speak on this topic, that you're excited about this topic? So see this as your little moment of intro, little moment of fame here on the stream. We're going to pass it to Leon first.
Thank you, Fred. What makes me interested in storytelling? I guess the act of community building was something that was bestowed upon me in 2017. I was studying university in Montreal in Canada. And at some stage during my lecture, I don't remember what lecture it was, but I remember looking at the board and I was like, man, this information is packaged in, it's such interesting information, but the packaging is really not digestible. So what I decided to do one day is start repackaging some of the knowledge that I was acquiring on social media, on Instagram. And I started making posts about the things I was learning, the things I was looking at, what was happening in the world of engineering and technology. And very quickly, other people on the internet started also appreciating what I was putting out, and very quickly grew that brand to one of the biggest internet communities in the engineering and technology space, today sitting at over 1 million followers on Instagram. And I realized in a market that was becoming more and more saturated with similar pages, with similar content, everyone was covering the same niche. Out of adaptation, I started embedding a bit of storytelling within the brand. I started embedding a hint of character. I started showing myself, showing my process as I was going through the transformation that a lot of my followers, my community members wanted to go through. And all of a sudden found myself with a community strength that was superior to that of the other competitors in the space. And if there was one thing I would give credit to, it was storytelling. And that became, through luck or through coincidence, it became my first introduction to storytelling. And that was the moment I realized how much of a superpower storytelling was to bring people together and foster a strong sense of community.
I love that, man. I have to say,
follow that. I'm gonna follow that. Come on.
We're just gonna do air horns here. We're gonna do the Kobe where it's due. We see it a lot on the timeline when Leon posts, and that's why I'm so excited to have him here. He draws from a wealth of experience. He's too humble to say what he does in this space, but he works with I think, has it been hundreds at this point of
Hundreds.
projects, Leon, where you've
Hundreds.
really focused on NFT, right? NFT enabled projects, and how can they level up their storytelling to have massive success in community building here in our space. So thank you for taking the time for joining. We're going to pass it to Devin as well. Yeah, who also, you've done amazing things yourself. Don't be shy, and let the people know what interests you in storytelling, and why are you here, Devin?
I think storytelling is the best way to propel growth and to inspire loyalty in your community. And I think that in Web3, we're really good at telling stories. Like I like to say, we're good at telling stories. We're good at creating memes and making noise around specific topics. But I think as an industry, we've still got a lot to learn about storytelling. And I think that we're still sort of very haphazard in the way that we go about it. And we're not yet mature as an industry when it comes to building cohesive narratives and then telling those stories in compelling and consistent ways across all media. The reason that I'm so big on it, I'm a reformed engineer. I started out my career as an engineer. I spent the first half of it, trying to build things. And in the second half of my career, I've spent mostly in strategy and in marketing. And I first cottoned on to the power of storytelling when I was at Disney many years ago. I used to lead marketing strategy for one of the bigger consumer product groups at Disney, and then moved over to the studios. And then that really got me thinking about what it is that makes Disney such a powerful brand. And I kept thinking about that when I went to Oakley after that. I led their global digital team. And just from those two brands, I really started to develop a strong appreciation for how storytelling done like in a longitudinal way around a really cohesive brand position actually is probably the most powerful technique for building long-term relationships with, I wrote a blog post years ago now, but it was basically getting to the point that like the brands that really understand what loyalty is about are all steeped in storytelling, and they understand how to talk about what they do in a way that really resonates with the people that they serve. And so I guess I could go on and on about it, but I brought some of that thinking with me when I got involved in Web3. Sort of before the last bull run, I was the first CMO at Avalabs and helped to build the brand there at Avalanche with a great team. And then I took the same ideas over to Immutable, where I spent most of last year trying to help them, get cohesive narratives that everybody can rally around. Because I think the problem with storytelling is it's not just about external communications, but how many young companies have you spoken to, and people inside the four walls of their company are completely confused about what they do, right? They all have different answers to the question of what do you do? So there's like this narrative void, and it's really frustrating for employees. You talk to product, you talk to BD, you talk to marketing. They all have a different way of thinking about the market. And so that creates a lot of friction internally. And I found that when you can rally the team around a common view on the market and what your story is to that market, then it makes your operations internally much more fluid. People can pass the ball into space because they know people are going to be there to catch it, sort of thing, to use a sports analogy. And of course, it really helps to clarify your message externally to customers. So I think that right now, storytelling is paramount because the only projects that are left are the ones that are legitimate. We just come out of the bear market. The only ones that have survived through that are the legitimate builders. Everybody's had their head down. And now it's like, oh, well, okay, we're not the pariah of the world anymore. People are actually excited about what we're building. Geez, we need to get out there and tell our story. And so I think if you're a storyteller or you're interested in learning more about storytelling, this is a great time to be in the business.
Can I mirror something Devin said, Fred?
Oh, go right ahead, man.
Devin, you said something and you nailed it on the head. Storytelling is a big part of Web3. I would make the argument that storytelling is all Web3 has. At the end of the day, there's two types of utility customers buy into. There's the practical utility. I buy my car to go from point A to point B, but more often than not, people end up buying the emotional utility of the product. There's a reason why people are going for specific brands because they want to communicate different parts of who they are, or they want to communicate to different people around them. In Web3, the only thing that we have is emotional utility. There is no such thing as practical utility. Name me one NFT project, Web3 brand that has a functional product, and that's okay because we're still trying to figure ourselves out as an industry. So, considering that emotional utility is the only thing that exists, what is the best way to form emotional utility? It's through stories. It's through the stories we tell ourselves and we tell our communities that bring people together and allow us to form what we have today, which is community.
100%. Yeah, look, I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I don't agree with the fact that there's only emotional utility. I mean, I think obviously Web3 is much bigger than just NFTs, but I definitely understand your point. And I think that, you know, if you think about what makes people choose particular brands, it's I always like to say we make our decisions here and then we justify them up
Yes.
here,
Yes.
right? And so I think that the point you're getting at is a really powerful one. It reminds me of a story that I repeat a lot because it's still so real for me in my mind. But when I first got to Ava Labs, obviously everyone was excited about the technology we were building, and everybody in the community kept saying, "Okay, great, we've got somebody here to help us with our messaging. What's the first thing that you want people to think about when they hear the word avalanche?" And I think I surprised them when I very quickly replied, "Nothing. I don't want people to think about anything because that's not how we make decisions. I want people to feel something, right?" And so I think that's really, really important because that's how we make our selection. You know, think about, you know, when you met your first love. And I think we're all old enough on this call to have had a first love by now. So think about when you met that first love. You didn't like sit back and then pull out your checklist and be like, okay, it's the right height or he the right height, you know, okay, right job. Okay, check, check, check. Like you did that later, right? But first you had to get it past the bouncer in your brain, which lives back here. And that bouncer is asking some really, really basic questions like, they call it the 4 Fs, like feed, fight, flee, or bleep, you know? And that's basically what our brains are thinking every time we encounter something new because people are lazy and they don't want to think about things. So give them something to cotton on to, give them a feeling, tell them who you are, and, you know, give them a call to action, invite them to join you on this mission. And if mission is not what brings people to crypto and Web3, then I don't know what is. Maybe greed, but you know that's not going to last long. So I think people that are here for the right reasons are here because they want to be part of a movement. They want to change the world, and this is a little part of what they can do to do that, right? So I think for all the projects out there, you should be thinking about what role are you playing in that meta narrative, right? How are you helping people change the world, and what does it mean to come and build with you? And it's not you're cheaper, faster, or more decentralized. Nobody cares about that shit. Nobody cares about it. You know, yes, it should work, but the best tech doesn't win. The best story wins always.
Very
And
true.
that's why we're here.
Fred, I don't know where you found Devin, but
I am happy
I
that
don't know where you found him, but this is great. I'm loving this.
yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm most excited about is that you guys meet as well, because I think you guys will jam well together. And so I'm stoked for this one. Guys, I'm going to share my screen, and I also see the people in the space. I have to recognize them. They have their hand up. I see you. We're going to get to you. What's going to happen next, guys? We're going to share the screen here. I'm going to do a little experiment. I've never done this before. There's a lot of firsts today. I've put up an Excali draw. It's like a kind of a whiteboard where we can draw together. And this one is going to show. Hopefully the producer puts it down. Ice is coming, correct. Yes, you can see it. We're going to talk about what transpired in the first 45 minutes. And we're actually going to give tactical advice on the challenges that these project builders, these brave leaders that came up here and shared their challenges in front of everyone, we're going to try and help them, right? And yeah, what actually transpired is a lot of people gave their takes. We had Forbes Web3 over up on stage as well. And they mentioned that, you know, a lot of things that you mentioned too, Leon, that this is a very fast space. It's very degen-y. So they don't overthink copy. They just do rapid experimentation. If it sticks, it sticks, boom. Very important. This ties into what Devin just said, how to keep it authentic. This is a pattern that came back to most of the panelists. Very specifically, we had 3 projects. We had Bloomverse, CryFi, and Tipsy, who are still up on stage with us here, share their challenges. And I'm just going to go through them and take notes as I just kind of review what the challenges were. So number one, let's go with Bloomverse. Bloomverse has a problem. If I may say so. No, this is the wrong way to phrase it. I'm already
We all do.
we all do. No, Bloomverse finds it hard to tell meaningful stories in a space that is so obsessed about the casino culture around crypto. There's deep lore. There's a spiritual aspect to the world that Bloomverse is building, and sometimes there's a bit of a cultural mismatch in that. How do we reconcile that in Web3? I think that's a very, very interesting one that I hope we can touch on. I'm going to write this down here. Second, CryFi is launching an NFT soon, and they've said the utility is there for the NFT. They're different, they're unique. They have a problem, a challenge in describing the value to the community, to the audience, to verbalize it, how unique it is and how it sets itself apart from others. Because there's such an overload of, hey, here's another NFT, especially during this bull cycle that we're in. And then Tipsy said something beautiful, how to make the depth and the harmony of the ecosystem and its products simple and easily digestible. That's a continuous challenge for them. So challenge. I'm just going to write here, and if you guys want to, actually, maybe this could be a good moment to also pass it to the hands on the panel and see what they think. And if I misrepresented something, or if someone from the three that I mentioned wants to give an additional comment, this is also the moment where we can jump in. Let's pass it to Amalia and then to Walt Disney real quick. Amalia, go ahead.
So, in my opinion, it's very hard to go past through the casino culture and Web3 and the laws around it. But then you can actually try to play around this with introduction of a product that isn't necessarily gambling or completely degen, but kind of create a lore around it that is casino related. That seems so. The part of the lore is degenerate, but then the actual product is, a nice entry to a financial product. It could be DeFi, it could be TradeFi, but just you keep the lore fun, something that people are used to. Or what I like to look at, and it's very, very fun to see and funny, where projects do so-called FUD painting, which is campaigning through FUD. So they FUD themselves. They would say, they would tweet like, "Oh, we're going to zero. Watch out. We sell all right now. We're ragging, right?" And people start laughing, especially if you look at the meme Solana or Base projects, which is fun to see. And actually that makes me want to kind of buy more, right? And I think people don't necessarily need a high volatility, but they just need fun. But correct me if I'm wrong, I have a very controversial thesis here about Slurf, where my thesis is, and I don't have absolutely any proof, I didn't analyze anything, but it's just thought that Slurf and fat fingering, burning the tokens, was kind of sort of the best fat painting I've ever seen in crypto. So I would like to see who thinks it was real, who thinks it was orchestrated. You probably, some of you have seen that they got listed on major exchanges, and some of the prominent figures and tier one brands have offered to kind of fundraise back for to get, charitably launch some stuff in order to put some money back onto the pre-sale people that got quote unquote rugged. So what do you think, guys?
Oh, Amalia, thanks for bringing that up. I think that's like it's a classic example of anyone who's working in Web3. Maybe it's their first time here in Web3. FUD painting, I've never heard that word before. Maybe I'm going to use it from now on. I kind of like it. It's the intentional use of FUD. Just a quick vibe check with you guys, Devin, Leon. What do you think about the intentional use of FUD in this space?
I'll go first. I don't mind. I think I don't think FUD is a tactic to. Well, let me rewind. Anybody that spent any time with me knows that one of my favorite sayings is winners think about winning, losers think about winners. And so I think that we're in a space that's much too small where we should be fighting, one another. Like I think that we should be locking arms and trying to figure out how to make this space more successful overall. So I'm actually not a big fan of fighting the competition. I think that's a sign of weakness, honestly. And I think that like if you have so much time to think about other projects, why aren't you thinking about your own, right? So um, I'm a big fan of this idea of trying to create a category of one and just doing something that's so of such great value and such a generous offer to the people that you're serving. You don't have to worry about your competition. Being clear about who you are, and that will really help you to stand out. So I don't think fighting is a good tactic at all. But I do recognize that it's part of our industry, and you've got to obviously be able to respond to it. So most of the stuff that I do around fighting is around fighting and making sure that you got a really strong playbook that doesn't come off as defensive or aggressive. And it's difficult when somebody attacks something that you love or that you've invested so much time and energy into it. So I always encourage projects to,
Well, I think you sorry to cut in. I think you misunderstood what I meant. I didn't mean flooding. I meant flood painting, where as part of campaign you make a joke that you're going to rug today or do something or something happens. So it's more like making
no,
fun.
I understood the question. I was getting there, so I'm gonna answer that in a sec. But I was just trying to, put down a baseline of I don't think fighting's good. I think that if you use it as a joke, as a way of negging yourself, like you just described, if that's going to be brand right for you, again, if you understand who you are and you know what your brand profile is, if part of who you are, your identity is that you are, self-deprecating, that you are not, egotistical, what have you, and if it's on brand, then by all means. But at the same time, like I think that there's enough people out there that are putting the industry down that I don't think it's really a good idea to necessarily talk about the things that we're doing poorly, or that, should I say, some bad actors in the space are doing poorly. And if we want the space to grow, I don't think it's a good idea to joke about rugging people. I mean, we have trust issues in this market, so we should be doing things that build feelings of safety and security. Obviously, there's going to be specific instances where it's just really funny. And so if it's an inside joke and it's very deep insider community kind of vibes, then I could see a place for it. But in general, I would say if you're still learning how to tell stories, then don't make FUD painting one of your pillars. If you do, at best, you're just going to end up putting yourself down. And I don't think that's helpful for brand development, my personal opinion.
Love it, Devin. Thanks for sharing. Leon, you got any thoughts on that before we move into the put it on the table section?
Yeah, I think the main point becomes longevity. What game are we playing right here? Are we playing the direct response marketing game, or are we playing the brand awareness game? In 2017, when I was building internet communities, I was really going the brand awareness route. I was organic content built on organic values, built on providing value to the marketplace. In 2020, 2021, I was convinced by a friend of mine, ended up being my business for 2 years, to go into direct response marketing. I was a dropshipper, pretty much. And if you don't know the business model, it pretty much the business model is built on finding arbitrage opportunities between a product that is in high demand, but is not well sold. So there's not a lot of supply of that product, but there is a demand. And that is direct response marketing. And although I did it for 2 years and it was very profitable, I hated it. I absolutely hated it because the brand longevity was so short. You would come out, use all the tactics in the playbook, urgency, scarcity, all the potential playbooks that you could use to bring attention to your brand. But guess what would happen? It would quickly fizzle off and onto the next brand. So for these projects, the casino projects, the projects that are using these tactics, they work. Urgency, scarcity, at the end of the day, controversy sells. It gets impressions when a project says like, hey, thanks for $500,000. See ya. Meet us in the Bahamas. It gets eyeballs, but does it get, no doubts on that, but does it create brand longevity? For these founders, I would tell them, see you in 2 years. Are you still going to be here? Most likely not. So it does the work, yes. Does it work for long-term founders with long-term visions that are trying to create long-term change? Absolutely freaking not.
Bang, bang. We got clear answers, clear opinions here from the gens. I love it. Guys, I want to be conscious of the clock. I can only take one hand before we move over here to the section, which is actually the meat and potatoes of why we're here. Walt Disney, you're gonna have to be okay with me giving it to Bloomverse. I'm sorry. You can comment it out down below, and maybe we can get to it in a bit. But we have 15 minutes left on the clock. So Bloomverse, over to you.
Thanks. No, and even with that, what I was going to say is that I really feel comfortable and happy when I can recognize I'm not the smartest or more experienced guy in the room. That's my favorite room to be. So I think I rather just listen than even. I did have a take, but I think I just want to keep listening to you guys. So I wish you all worked for me, kind of.
Cool. Tipsy, are you on desktop? Is that why you're waving like that?
Oh, no, sorry. I meant to say I need to head off to jump on another call. But thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tipsy. We'll get back to you later down the road with some answers to the stuff that we talked about. Thanks for joining, buddy. See you later. Okay.
Bloomverse, Fred, if you want, I can kick it off, and then I'd love to get Devin in, because clearly Devin has a wealth of experiences. His beard, you can see it carries more wisdom than mine.
Let's go.
The question was, it was just on the board, which was, how do you stand out with a spiritual? You want to take your customers on a spiritual journey in a market full of degen behavior and short-term casino projects. Correct?
We're simplifying it like that. Yes, that works. Bloomverse just hard it, so it's green lighted.
So the spiritual journey, again, that could mean a lot of things. Is it a spiritual product? I don't know, but spiritual journey, if there's one piece of resource I would recommend you to look into, it is this incredible book that I read a couple of years ago, and I keep referring to it. I keep rereading it, and it's the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And it literally gives you the framework that you can use to take your buyer on a journey and make your brand stick out from all the other competitors in the marketplace. And in a nutshell, and this is where pulling Devin in, and with his practical experience working with Disney and AVAX, the framework says that you have a character that has a problem and meets a guide who gives them a plan that calls them to action, which leads to a transformation. So the 6 pillars. Oftentimes, most brands, from what I've noticed and I've experienced, is that the brand itself positions itself as the hero. We are trying to change the world. We believe in this. We want to do that. It's not about you. The real story brands that are able to take their customers on a journey, in your case, a spiritual journey, are the ones that are able to position themselves as the guide, as the person, like, you have a problem. Let me hold your hand and guide you through that journey as you are traveling through it. So I haven't looked into your brand, but the first thing I would think I would look at and audit is, are you positioning yourself as the hero of your journey? Is this about what you want? Or are you actually trying to help someone who undergo their transformation, and you are actually producing content and reverse engineering your marketing to assist them on that journey?
I saw Devin nodding the head multiple times on, maybe even the book, maybe it, even Devin, but I want to pass it to you.
I do. I love it. I think I was going to make the exact same point, because while we were talking, I was like, oh crap, I need to figure out what Bloomverse is about. And so I went and had a look at the website, and that's the first thing that jumped out at me. I'm like, who's the character? The Google search said, we're all about the gamer. But when I got to the website, it said nothing about the gamer. Right. So not to dog on the website, but I think it's a really, really important point is, who are you really here to serve? And it's not yourself, right? It's don't try to find customers for your product. Figure out how to shape your product to serve the customer.
Beautiful.
Right? And you need to think outside in. And so who are you building for? And do you understand who they are? So, I always like to say the very first step in telling a story is I wrote a piece about this recently. Like, it's called Your Story Sucks Because You Don't Know Who You Are. So you have to figure out who you are first. Secondly, you have to figure out who's the customer, right? So that's question number 2. Question number 3, who are you to that customer? If you can answer those 3 questions, you've got a strong brand strategy and you've got a narrative. But it means that you actually they're easy questions to ask, but they're difficult questions to answer. And it means you really have to spend time understanding who that person, that group of people are that you're serving, what their problems are, because they're buying a solution to a different problem than the one you're selling a solution to, right? They're buying a solution to this internal problem. We're selling solutions to external problems. And the reason I love the story brand framework is that it's really simple and it's easy to learn. That's another big problem we have in this space is people don't know what good storytelling means. They don't know how to construct a story. And it's become like this sort of like black art. You've got these storytelling gurus that just happen to know what to say. And that's not how it works, guys. Like, these are basic techniques that you can learn if you're smart and interested. And there's a lot of different frameworks and techniques. I happen to love the story brand framework too, because it is one that reliably produces a great outcome. And I think that if it has any limitations, it's a little bit one-dimensional because it basically tells a rags to riches story, which is one of like 6 different story shapes. I think I'm afraid we were talking about this, right? But there was these enterprising.
What are story shapes? I want to know what that is.
Story shapes. Story shapes are. I love the soundboard. The story shapes are actually something that Kurt Vonnegut first cottoned on to, the famous author, and he recognized that like there's only a handful of different types of stories, and so he teamed up with some researchers in Australia. I want to say, Fred, I can get you the reference after if you want to share it with the community. But basically, they analyzed every story in the Gutenberg library, and like 14,000 some odd titles, and then they looked at the sentiment from beginning to end. And then they group these things, and they all follow similar shapes. So like rags to riches, starts out sad, ends up happy. Trading places. I don't know. There's probably a million stories you could put into that. There's other story shapes. So like The Martian, Man in a Hole, starts off great, gets really bad, and then ends really great. That's another story shape, right? There's another one called the Cinderella shape. Cinderella starts off not great, gets really good, then gets really bad, but then ends really good. That's also the story of Slumdog Millionaire, right? So it's like there's only so many stories. And what's interesting is if you map those story shapes back against like commercial success of the box office, you'll find that there's a handful of story shapes that like perennially do well. It's never the movie that like starts off great and then it just gets just awful and ends depressing and then the movie ends. Like nobody wants to go see that. Like nobody wants that, right? So that story shape doesn't do well, but like Cinderella does well, Rags to Riches does well. Anyway, getting back to story brand, it's helpful because it's repeatable and it teaches you to get the Lego blocks that you need to be able to assemble a story. So that's actually one of the techniques that I use a lot with my clients in helping them figure out who are you, who is your customer. And if you do a good job of really digging into that, you've got all the right ingredients that you can then assemble into a nice little brand narrative. Now you can go and tell that story across all forms of media. You can tell it with blog posts. You can tell it with live events. You can tell it with social media things. And that comes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, what story are you trying to tell? And then go and tell it in a bunch of different ways, right? So that if somebody's following you and is close to your brand within the 3, 4, 5, 6 month period, they've heard that same story so many times in slightly different ways that starts to really sink in. Now, when people ask them about you, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to repeat that story that you taught them, because stories are easy to remember. Seth Godin calls it the original human technology. I love that description, right? Because this is baked into our DNA. And our job as brands is to give people really compelling stories that are easy to remember, that make them feel something, because then that's what will make them remember it. And that's easy for them to repeat so that they can spread the good word for us. It's not our job to pass this message along. Religions didn't succeed because they had great marketing. right? There was no like marketing department deciding what to tweet this week so that more people would convert to Islam or Judaism or Christianity. But here it is, billions of people following, these things that,
These stories.
are out there. These stories, they're stories. And, spreading the good word, spreading the gospel, whatever, your religion or phrase is, insert it here. But that's what it's about. Word of mouth and mimesis is still, by and large, the way that you build a brand. And you can't do that if you don't give people good stories to tell about you.
Absolute banger. This makes me want to do a continued space around this on how memetics and meme culture fits into the storytelling. This is something we should talk about maybe on another space. But there's a lot of practical stuff, Devin and Leon, that you put in here, even resources, which I'm going to share later with all of you guys. I'm going to do a little recap. But I absolutely loved it. This was very tangible, right? You have the story shapes that you can fit into your story. You have a framework that is repeatable and proven. Repetition was one thing that Forbes mentioned when they were up in here, that DGens forget about things a lot and they have to be reminded. And so they constantly think about repetition in their marketing.
Mm-hmm.
How can we make a point repeatedly? And
it takes 7 times of repeating a message before people even start paying attention.
Tendency increasing, right? It's like the humans of next year will need 8, and then the year thereafter 10. That's how it feels.
I think that's a really good practical piece of advice too. Is it's like, I think every marketing team I talk to feels under so much pressure to like come up with something new. It's like, oh, we've got mainnet launch. What are we going to do? We need something crazy to get people to pay attention. And yeah, that's fine. But really what you need to do is you just need to tell the same damn story. Tell it well, tell it slightly different formats, but make sure you tell it. This isn't about just like capturing somebody in the moment. It's about making them remember what you're sharing.
Very good. Fred, next time you and I are moderating, Devin.
I think so. Cool.
Guys, by the way, Monte asked a very good question right here. I don't know if you can pin this. He asked, what is stronger, story or culture when it comes to having a good brand? I'm sure Devin would agree, but story creates culture. So you can't have culture without the stories. A culture is nothing but the stories that community members repeat themselves between themselves.
I think that's a really nice way of putting it, Leon. I think that like that first question of who you are really speaks greatly to the culture. And so, the story is emanating from a source, and that source is your culture. Drucker used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'm a big believer in that, having worked with a lot of different companies. Those that succeed are those that have strong culture. And so I think that culture is is where the stories are born from. So, like a great story begins with a sense of mission, right? And so as a brand, you spoke about being a guide. What are we trying to help these people do? Like, what is this transformation they're going through? And what's our mission in life? Like that is the heart of culture. Like, why did you form this company? Why does it exist? What are we trying to do? And it's like culture and storytelling, I think, are enmeshed in many different ways. You put it very nicely.
Guys, I think what I loved about the answers that we gave to the first one, to Bloomverse, the answers really help with all the things that were put forth by the panelists as a challenge, almost to an extent where it's just like, I think we have the answers already. We have the resources. Let's apply it. How to make something simple, how to verbalize the value and the uniqueness, how to tell a meaningful story in a space of DGen culture. I think if we know who we are, like Devin said, and we spread our mission of like, what are we here to solve repeatedly, not just for a silly activation that we do next Thursday. We have to get it out next Thursday by all means, right? How often do I get that request as someone in an agency as well? And then I always have to loop it back and say, guys, this is a long-term thing. This is an organic effort that we have to commit to this, right? I want to have maybe the last hand go to Walt Disney because they've been so patient, and I want to give them a moment of speech here. Over to you, Walt Disney. What do you got?
Oh man, yeah, I can wait. And first off, I'm not drinking yet. I got to go to the gym first, but I did want to say, just touching on storytelling. I know my name's Walt Disney. I'm not Walt Disney. He died a long time ago, but he was a great storyteller, probably one of the best. And I think one of the reasons why he was so powerful is it has to be relatable. And I think one of the biggest problems, I've hosted spaces in the past, and I've seen a lot of projects come up, and they were mega spaces. And it was frustrating for me because when you're burning through 20, 30 projects, you cannot go deep. You can't go into the project all that well. And I very much liken it to the ocean. Everybody likes the ocean. They like to see the ocean. They like to hear the ocean. But where does it get interesting? It gets interesting when you go down deep, when you go down to the coral reef, not at the surface. It's cool to see the surface and the water and everything, but it gets better when you go down deeper and the ocean starts to tell you a story with coral reefs, sunken ships, different plant life, different ocean life, that kind of thing. Why? Because we've never heard it before. So I think like for Bloomverse, maybe they're stuck at the surface and they're finding all those casino people, but they haven't found their niche audience yet. And when you humanize yourself on spaces and people get to know you and get to know who you really are, they're going to be drawn to whatever you're doing. And they're going to be asking you, can you give me more information about your product? Can you give me more information about Bloomverse and stuff like that? And it's going to make going to spaces not only fun, but people are going to be like, oh, he's up on stage. All right, yeah, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him. These are what makes, like, these opportunities have never been available to us before. And that's why people don't like standard radio. They like podcasts, because podcasts, you can get a full-blown interview with somebody and humanize them. And I think that's what Web3 storytelling is all about. And that's why everybody likes spaces so much. But now that we have the metaverse opening up to us, it's opening up new avenues. And we can storytell right in the metaverse. We can live stream ourselves, maybe as an avatar. And we can actually storytell our own opportunities with Unreal Engine 5 or all kinds of things. And this has never been available to us, but that's the power of Web3. And you don't have to worry about doing it alone. You have people working together with you that want to help you, that want to see you succeed. And they're not like your enemy. There's no enemies in Web3. And if they are, they're not going to last. You can't be complacent in Web3. You have to be open-minded. If you're not open-minded, it's a fast changing industry. It changes every freaking day. And people that are like closed-minded to maybe changing the narrative, pivoting, all that kind of stuff, they just don't last. So I know I probably don't know jack crap compared to the people on the stage, but I've been able to share the stage with some of you, and I love these spaces because I always take something away. I always learn something, and I write it down, and I put it on my goals board, and then I go back 6 months later. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to remember that one. And that's why I like these spaces. Yeah, we all do some degen crap. We're all degens. But these are the ones where you can take something away and use it in your day-to-day life.
Amen, brother. Walt Disney, you're doing your name justice up here on stage. I appreciate you for giving that comment, giving one of the last words here up on the spaces today. This is exactly why we're doing it, so that people can take something home and that tomorrow can be different, that tomorrow can be better. And that's why I'm excited to recap all the amazing nuggets that have been shared today by everyone up in the panel, by all the amazing guests, and especially by Devin and Leon. I thank you guys for coming. So I'll give a quick applause. I don't have the applause on the soundboard, so it's going to be manual. Who would have thought? Leon, Devin, parting comments. What are you guys thinking? How did you like it?
I would say keep tinkering. It's not a sexy journey, especially if you're gonna go the brand awareness route. It's easy to fall for the short-term temptation, which is using the scarcity urgency to build your brand. But if you really are here to build long-term, stick with the foundation.
I think that's really excellent advice, Leon. I would add to that and say, take responsibility for your story. If you're a founder or if you're a managing executive at a company and you're trying to build something, like storytelling is not something you should just outsource. Okay, you can't. It's not like ordering a meal at a restaurant. You just order up a result in marketing. That's not how it works. If you are a company leader, you need to be able to tell your company's story, and if you can't, it means you don't have one. And Ben Horowitz famously said, "A company without a story is usually a company without a strategy." Right? So you need to take it upon yourself to figure out what your story is. And if you don't know, go and learn how to tell it. It's not that complicated. Honestly, if you have the time and you have the wherewithal, you can learn how to do it. And you'll be a better partner to your marketing and your brand leaders in the company. You'll be a better partner to your community. And you'll watch this thing that you've spent all this time building, you'll watch it fly. But you have to take responsibility for it. Don't outsource it. Learn how to do it yourself.
Bang, bang, guys. I love to end it on this note. This was excellent, tangible advice here. We shared some tactics for builders, for leaders on how to storytell in Web3. Everyone can be a leader, and you have everything in you to action it. And so I urge you to wake up tomorrow and do just that. I will see you guys again next Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern. We do this every week. Let's roll. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Fred. Devin.
Thanks, guys. See you in the Twitter sphere. See you guys.
Absolutely.
I ended the space now.
Oh, we're ended. Okay, good.